Hey everybody, welcome back. I am with my good friend Abel James, who you'll recognize from the movie, and we are in my newly created garden, which is about to turn into a garden. Right now it's a bunch of dirt.
And I wouldn't exactly call it a garden.
It's a dirt garden. And so instead of doing an interview over Skype, Abel happens to be in my town this week, so he's over here.
In your house, no less.
That's right, in my house.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, exactly. The classic definition of homeboy, right? So Abel's doing some great work around the world, and he's made some interesting changes in his life. Fat Burning Man is his podcast, and he's been an instrumental dude in the world of teaching people how to think about food differently. Think about movement differently, and all sorts of things that we don't think about when we're looking for the next fad diet to change our lives or save our lives.
Yeah.
So, man, you just sold your house and most of your possessions and took the show on the road. I'd really like to talk about that because it's awesome.
Yeah, so it's really cool. When you change one part of your life, a lot of times it seeps into the other pieces that you didn't expect to change, but they inevitably do. And so what I mean by that is I kind of, I followed the conventional wisdom for a while, and I excelled in that path. I was always like one of the annoying overachiever kids in school, right, who always needed to do, even in my workouts, I tell people, do it until, you know, like X amount, and you can't do any more, and then do 7 more after that, at your own pace, and then that's the end of your workout, and that's the little bonus. So like, I've always been at you, like, go to the end till you can't do it anymore, then do a little bit more. And so when I followed the wrong advice, that was catastrophic, right? And so I found that not only did I have a desk job like everybody else, right? Because I went to one of the best schools that America has, and then so I got the best education, and then I got the worst loans, and I got the best job coming out of school to pay off the worst loans that I had to get to go to the best school. And then, you know, it's time to chase the American dream. And so I found myself essentially like fat and sick, overweight in my early 20s. And I'd lost my vitality. I'd lost that glow, that thing that makes me alive. Despite the fact that, you know, I was making a crap ton of money, and I was, you know, on my way up, gonna be a VP by 26 or whatever, but I was miserable. And I was stressed, and I wasn't sleeping, and all of a sudden my body started to fall apart. But yeah, the other piece of that is that I did have the desk job, and I did have that kind of like, oh, this is it type feeling about life. And you know, so skip ahead until now. I changed my diet, I lost all the weight, I got my vitality back, my athleticism that I had as a teen that I kind of like lost in my early 20s. I got it back. It just came right back as soon as I stopped listening to my doctor and the fitness magazines, and just kind of like gave myself a hearty dose of common sense. But the coolest part is what happened after that, which is, you know, how far can I let this go? You know, how far can I move this thing forward and get away from what I thought I wanted, which was, you know, like the big cool house and like the fast car. We were just talking about that before we started recording, but you know, Pedram got the Range Rover, I got the Porsche. I took it to the, I raced it like the first weekend I got it, like you took it outdoors or whatever. Same deal, but at some point you realize that things aren't what you want, and they start to own you. And I found that I was just, despite the fact that I had pretty much everything that I wanted, in my early 20s, and thank God for that. That was a wonderful, wonderful thing, because I realized that it didn't actually make me happy. And I had, once again, that, oh, this is it? Type feeling. And so the thing that I've learned is that I need to make myself habitually uncomfortable in order to grow, which makes me happy. It's the challenges of life that really bring out that overachiever in me. And, you know, then life just brings you on incredible adventures that have led me right here.
Follow those breadcrumbs.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about that, because we talked in the movie about the kind of like the survivor genes, right?
Yeah.
And what our ancestors had, and the struggle for you know, survival also made us. All of our inventions came from that, and our innovations came from that, and we just got really good by having our back against the wall,
right,
and you know, being minimalist.
Yeah.
And so right now you're about as agile as anyone I know. I mean, you're not living out of a backpack,
right?
But you know, you and your fiance are in a trailer, and you're traveling the country or the world and doing your thing.
Yeah.
What has that agility done for you by untethering from the quote-unquote American dream and
right,
being able to find some freedom?
It's so cool because, like, when I used to leave the house, there were many things that I'd have to do over the course of the day. I'd have to go to the bank. I'd have to like go get lunch. I'd have to figure out where to go get lunch, and I'd just need things from the world around me. When you leave that world behind and you become self-sufficient, when you become like an independent being in the world around you that doesn't need anything from it, then all of a sudden you can start living. And so that's what we try to do now. It's like, yeah, right now we're living out of a trailer, which is also a house and also a vehicle or whatever, but it's also base camp. When we go to a national park, it's like we don't need a little cabin that has survival gear in it because like it's in the parking lot. Like our base camp is in the parking lot. But then it's like you compartmentalize. So that's like the bigger one, but we also have the truck, which tows the fifth wheel. And so that's another like survival mobile. And we have, we take camping trips out of that. And so we can put like the tent and like the tiny little propane gas heater and stuff like that. And then we have the backpacking gear that we can take on like overnight trips. And then we have the smaller trips. So like this is all, we've gotten very specific with what we have in each one of those compartments. So we know how to survive with nothing, just the stuff in our pockets or even less than that, all the way to, you know, we've lived in the, you know, 4,000 square foot house as well, and we know what that's like. And I can tell you that the farther that we get on the spectrum to like a little bit more than a car, or somewhere in between like having a little bit of stuff in your pockets and having a little bit more than a car, that's like the sweet spot in terms of stuff, because it's an anchor, whether you realize it or not. And a lot of times it anchors you to the wrong thing.
Let's talk about that in terms of the ecology of where we live, because people are clamoring to buy stuff.
Yeah.
Right? And this whole thing we're going to do with Black Friday and taking it back is, you know, we have these ships, these cargo ships filled with containers, filled with stuff.
Yeah.
That's, you know, paint that's coated in lead and just garbage that we don't actually need.
Right.
I mean, how many pairs of shoes do you actually need, right?
Yeah.
And so now one of our biggest problems ecologically and sociologically is like, you know, we just clamor for stuff that doesn't make us happy, and it ruins the planet, and it's damaging the ecosystem and the economy of like what really matters.
Yeah.
So I'd love for you to speak to that a little bit.
It was really powerful going, like driving through the country, driving across the country is a powerful, powerful thing. Not only because you see nature in all of its glory, but also the dichotomy between that and what we've built. And so I found myself on many occasions in a place, and I'm like, why am I here? You know, if I'm following life's breadcrumbs or whatever, what am I doing here? And there was this one moment, I don't even remember which city it was in. It wasn't actually a city. It was like it was supposed to be a nature place, and we were camping, you know, at this KOA. And we always go to KOA because, like, especially when you have a trailer or an RV, we go there like once a week just to kind of like let go all of the gray water and the sewage or whatever and do laundry, stuff like that. But, you know, people are going there and they're camping, and that's the experience. And it's about, I don't know, 3 to 4 minutes off the highway. That's another reason it's super convenient. We'll go on the way to somewhere else. And so we're at this place, and like, I don't even remember where it was. It doesn't really matter because there are so many places just like it. But it's the nighttime, and we're on the roof. We love to go on the roof and look at the stars. And, you know, we just kept hearing these screaming tires and these really loud engines of the semis that were going by, tearing up the road, you know, at 75, 80 miles an hour. Like the speed limit's 80 in some states. And this one was in the middle of nowhere, but it was so loud and it was so bright. And I'm looking out, you know, sitting on top of my house that's in a trailer that's towed by this enormous truck. I mean, this truck, we bought it new because our other truck that we had caught fire. And so we're like, screw that, we're gonna go new and do it. Costs us as much as a Maserati. You know, it's like a mean, big machine, and I'm embarrassed by the gas mileage that it gets, but it's also just kind of like what it is. There's not much of an alternative at this point. And so I'm thinking about the truck, and I'm thinking about like living on this trailer, kind of like this minimalist life or whatever. I realize we have 10 times as much stuff as most people in other countries, even in that trailer. And I'm looking out at this extremely loud, it's the middle of the night, and I'm trying to look at the stars, enjoy the moment with Allison, and I realize it's so loud, I can't concentrate, and I'm looking out at these enormous things that are bigger than the house that I'm sitting on, just speeding back and forth, and I'm thinking to myself, like, how many of those truckers really want to be going right now? And what are they carrying in the back? You know, like what is this crap that they're trucking across the country? And why in God's name are they doing it through the middle of the night? Why is it so bright? Because we wouldn't need any of those lights if we were just, you know, being sensible about it and driving during the day, if we're driving at all. You know, so I'm just looking at this. I'm trying to enjoy nature, trying to get out of it, and I realize that we are in an artery of commerce, you know, that's just going straight through the country. And I'm thinking of, you know, we just came from the mountains, and there are elk there, and mule deer, and you know, wonderful birds that navigate with the stars that they can't see because of all these artificial lights that need to be on for the safety of the people who don't want to be up but are just kind of like taking our crap across the country so we can buy more shoes. And so it was a really powerful, it was a powerful thing.
Yeah, and so, okay, we're sitting here with the backdrop of a garden that's going in. This weekend we put in all this dirt. It's going to turn into a self-sufficient garden. I don't know if this will completely feed my family, but it's a good start.
Yeah.
Right? We tore out our lawn because lawns suck. And
right.
We don't need that, right? Like, why would you waste water, which is,
yeah.
you know, we're in a drought.
Sure.
And so we're working towards self-sufficiency, and you're right. I mean, all the stuff around here is stuff. I mean, I need a laptop to communicate with my world. We make movies.
Right.
But then you start reconciling what you actually use, actually need, and what we're spending our hard-earned money on, which is our time, which is all we got. And it doesn't pencil out, because if people were actually happy and healthy, it'd be one thing, but it's like we're chasing this dream, and we're also becoming more miserable, more fat,
right.
And the world is getting filled with mercury.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's we're tricked into thinking that we want it, but what we actually want is, you know, that cliche from Braveheart. We want freedom. We want independence. We want the ability to take a weekend whenever we want to. Problem is we can't, because we have that job that we need to pay for the stuff that we think that we want, but we don't actually want. And so it doesn't all happen like taking off a Band-Aid for most people. It's not like you go ascetic and you leave everything but a bowl of rice for yourself for the rest of your life. You just kind of live that way. For most people, that's not realistic, and it's not really what you want. But I can tell you, when you start to re-examine what it is you actually enjoy, the things that make you the most happy every minute of the day, then just kind of like do a little bit more of that and a little bit less of the other stuff. So if you find that you're shopping online because you think you like it, like, do you really? Like, do you really need that extra pair of socks, or that extra pair of shoes, or whatever else some commercial said that you needed because it said that you were broken, and then, you know, played to that weakness in you that makes you feel like you need something more. You don't need anything more from the world around you. I think one of the reasons that people don't go through that exercise is because it's inherently work, right? When you turn down all the noise, when you turn off all the machines, when you get rid of most of your stuff, all of a sudden you realize that you kind of have to deal with yourself, and you have to deal with the baggage, and you have to deal with the emotions and the drama and the stored up things. But if you do that a little bit at a time, I think a lot of people get a lot of success when they just take a few minutes a day to kind of turn down everything and just have a little bit of me time, you know? You could call it meditation, you could call it running, or whatever, but you just taking that time is usually the first step that leads to kind of cool places.
So you start taking the time, you start gaining some clarity, you start spending some time outside of the rat race, so to speak, and you're not freaking out like you used to.
Yeah.
And then you start realizing that not all your decisions are obligatory. Like, you don't have to go to that party tonight.
Right.
Right? You don't have to do most things other than eat, sleep.
Right.
You know, have some sort of shelter over your head.
Yeah.
And then you start liberating. I mean, obviously in the movie we had Cliff teaching us how to live off the land with, you know, sticks and rocks and stuff, right? Which is cool, if you need that.
Yeah.
Right? And, you know, I think spoons are really cool. Right?
Sure.
And we have enough guests to come over. We
Right.
don't have chests of silver spoons. You know, it's like, how much is enough?
Yeah.
And you know, look, all things in life are fine.
Yeah.
But whether you're a slave to your things or your things are actually enhancing your life is really the question of the hour.
Absolutely. And we just have too much stuff, and you don't really realize it until you take the time to actually go through, like I said, that work, that exercise, and you're like, you have to admit it to yourself at some point. You don't like it, and you might be in denial, like I was. You know, like I wanted to say, I worked so hard to get to where I was. You know, like we all do. When you get that car, when you get that house, or when you get that anything, when you get that job, you're just like, yes! And that lasts about 15 seconds, and then you're just like, oh, I have to keep this job, to keep this house, and this is. Then all of a sudden you're back to where you are, and you have, you know, a garage full of crap that has accumulated over the years, and so moving isn't a possibility, because then you'd have to, you know, like have a yard sale and go through all of the exercises of getting rid of the stuff, which is inherently painful. And so we just all find that we're kind of clogging our own arteries of life and energy because it's just too much stuff. And as soon as, the reason that people like vacation is because you're free. You can do whatever you want. There isn't, you know, laundry over there, and there isn't some unread book over there to remind you of how much of a loser you are because you can't get to it. And, you know, and that's what your environment tugs at you, and it doesn't have to. When you liberate your environment from itself, when you start to live with less, then you can really live. Then you can just kind of every day choose whatever you want to do. Like there's no real, aside from this, I suppose, there's no real reason that we're here except for the fact that we really enjoy you guys and we consider you family. And we're here only because we uprooted ourselves so that we can be with the people we love. And we came from, you know, Allison's family. We were spending weeks with Allison's family, and then we spent weeks with mine. And I mean, some people have kind of accused me of saying, oh, it must be nice, you know, to be able to travel the world and, you know, just not have a day job and whatever. It's like, I do have a day job. I have several, as you well know, and you have several as well. It's a lot of work, but it takes a conscious effort to build your life this way so that you can visit the people you love. And it might be as simple as if you do have a desk job, and you know, we need those. We need to pay the bills, and we need to support our families, but it could be as simple as, you know, saying to your boss, you know, I really love working from home. I would love to be with my family for at least a half day on Monday afternoons or something like that. Can I telecommute and work from home? And then going from there, that's what I did. That's where I started. And then, you know, that became telecommuting with my desk job. And then that became like starting my own company because then I knew how to run a company myself. And then that became, you know, running my own, which is distinct from my partners even, and growing, you know, a seven-figure empire in its own right while traveling the world and while doing all this other stuff. So that took me 3 years. It could take you even less, like who knows. But if you start whittling it down and really re-examining what it is you need and want, then the world really is your oyster. You know, you can do anything you want. It's fabulous.
So the message I'm hearing here is that we have these hidden psychological constraints.
Right.
Right. I mean, everyone's out there busting their butts. I mean, we all work pretty hard. Yeah. Right. And so some people have bought into this vision of what life is supposed to be. So therefore I pollute, therefore I'm driving around the mall looking for frickin' parking after an hour because it's holiday season and I got to buy some stuff in the name of baby Jesus for my loved ones, right? Yeah. And so we fall into all these kind of ridiculous places where we think we have to.
Right.
And so that's part of our entire mission here. And we've been talking a lot about this stuff is, you know, we're taking back Black Friday. It's nonsense. What do I care about these corporations that run at a loss all year so that they can make money off of us because that's patriotic?
Yeah.
Why don't you support the people that aren't poisoning the world and support your family and support, you know, things that mean something? How about that for being patriotic?
How about apple pie Friday? Why don't we just stay home and make some pie instead of going shopping? Like, seriously, that's what I'm talking about, right? Like, if you go back to your favorite memories of being a kid, you know, and a lot of us have families, right? Like, if you go back to your favorite memories, it's not the ones that you're shopping with your parents or you're shopping with your friends or whatever. It's when you're at home with your fingers in the batter and you're making some god-awful cookies or baked goods of some kind. You're drinking with friends. You're enjoying yourself. You're not out, you know, like speeding commerce and encouraging those trucks that are polluting the country, that are full of drivers who don't want to be driving through the middle of the night. You know, it's just like perpetuating this system that it's so easy to realize, to not realize what we're all doing, right? But if you buy something in California that comes from Texas, some drivers stayed up all night polluting the world to get that crap to you. And so almost none of us need anything that's from far away. It's just, and I'll tell you what too, it's like when you start living, when you go camping or whatever, pack it in, pack it out, then you probably know kind of what it's like to live in an RV or to live like you're camping, which is kind of what we do, and it's so much fun to live that way. You start to see the waste that you create. And one of the things that I loathe is the amount of waste that I myself create just by drinking water and kombucha and other things that come in bottles that there isn't like a way to refill them, you know, from supermarkets and other things like that. So just when you start to live like you're camping, you are packing in and packing out all of your waste. And so you see how many bags of trash you create every day. And it's like, where does that trash go? Does recycling actually work? You know, and like,
and what's the
is
cost?
it really necessary? And so same thing with your physical waste and the amount of water that you use and the amount of electricity that you use. You start to think about it and you're like, I've measured it, and we use about 1/10 of the energy now as we used to in our house. And so many of us, you know, have these enormous houses that are too big for what we need, but we think that we need them because, you know, keeping up with the Joneses or, you know, bigger is better. We don't usually need it, but we have it anyway, and we're running the air conditioner or the heat all day. Even though we're not there, we're at another even bigger office building, which is running the air conditioner or the heat all day to make sure that we're all at this artificial temperature that our body can't really, you know, such that we can't adapt to the seasons.
Because this right here, this is horrible.
Yeah,
I mean, who wants to get sunshine?
Totally.
And be outside on a beautiful day.
Or sweat or shiver or feel anything at all.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, that's the thing that we've really been disconnected from. It's when you go outside, when you take the plunge, the polar bear plunge into the ice or whatever, you feel alive. If you've ever done that, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But when you go into the nice squishy office building that's nice and toasty and you have your hot cocoa every day, then it's like you never really get to experience that. You need to make yourself habitually uncomfortable to exercise your natural mechanisms of physiology that make you feel alive, that make you adjust to the seasons, because we're not all so different from bears and other animals that do have these natural cycles that go with the seasons. And when we're so disconnected with every sense, from sight to sound to feeling, to, you know, the very temperature of your body and how it deals with what's around it. I mean, when you disconnect from that, it's really easy to get lost and unhappy because it's just disconnected from the way we're supposed to live.
You know, in the movie we talked about how plants develop more phytonutrients by the challenges, the bugs and the attacks and the temperature differential and all these things that make the plant stronger and for us more nutritious in our consumption of it. And the human body, I mean, this training called tempering. You know, you do heat and cold and you temper your body to understand that there's a variance. And because of that, your epigenetic expression makes you stronger, makes you more of a man, more of a woman, and able to adapt and be like just more adaptable and pliable in life. And it seems that this societal drive to avoid all things in the extremes and keep everything in that Goldilocks zone is dulling our minds.
Yeah, I think it is dulling our minds and dulling our spirit. Because when you just get too comfortable, then even jumping into the pool on a day like this, if the water's a little bit cold, you're like, not worth it. I'm not gonna go swimming, right? And it's just, how many times are you doing that per day? Not necessarily with swimming, but with other things in life. Like what are you missing out on? Because especially, you know, making this, so we unplugged like 3 months ago in June, and we've been living essentially out of national parks or international countries or you know, out of our family's houses and friends' houses ever since. And when you realize that at any waking moment you could be at a place like Zion National Park, when you're surrounded by these magnificent red rocks and 225 million year old petrified wood pieces in the middle of a desert, you know, like when you realize that you could just as easily be there at any given moment, that magical place, as behind the desk in some stuffy office building, you're like, wow, I wish I'd realized this sooner, you know? But the truth of the matter is any of us can take that adventure, and I believe that we all should. And we need to get back to that, because it's kind of silly that we treat camping as recreation, right? that used to just be survival. We didn't need to go camping because we lived without electricity. My grandmother, she didn't have a water heater. She heated all of the water for my dad's generation. He was one of 7. The entire family of 9, and a lot of times they lived right next to Carlton Fisk's family, actually, and I think they had something like 20 kids running around at that compound, and so they would have them over so they had, like a dozen people there all the time, and she would every single day carry the water and hand boil it on the stove and then pour it in for baths and for dishes and for everything else. You don't need a thigh master when you live like that.
It's funny, we were working here, and I got this little magnet on my hand right now because the only shoveling I've done in the last 5-10 years has been dog poop. Right? And these things are full of dirt. We got some organic farm to bring us this dirt.
Smells delicious.
Smells delicious. And it was like, I was telling him, I'm like, we should do a workout video that's called Work. It's just like putting the work back into workout. Because, man, I did not need to work out for 3 days after that.
Totally. And I told you this story, but you guys haven't heard it. When I first told my dad, I was about to go through puberty or whatever, and I watched Rocky for the first time and thought it was cool, and I'm just like, Dad, I want to lift weights. And he's like, ha, hop in the truck. And for the next 10 years, he's a stonemason, and I was lugging stones and 5-gallon buckets up and down stairs to build chimneys around the Northeast in the bitter cold and in the hot of the summer, and you don't need any sort of exercise equipment when you just, as a natural function of life, when you use your body like we all should. And so when you go camping, you do have to lift some wood and learn how to burn it and start a fire. And when you have a garden, you realize that you do need to move dirt and have a wheelbarrow. And sometimes it destroys your hand. You need to be stronger than the wheelbarrow.
Yeah.
You need to learn how to be hardier than you're used to being.
And that makes you a full spectrum human being. And that's so missing. Yeah. Yeah, see, okay, let's talk about that quickly, because most people who are living in a cubicle farm and going home and watching TV and just kind of plugged into the nonsense that's keeping the facade of this consumption civilization going, are not happy. They always say they're not happy. I don't know, I can't meet a man. There's no good girls out there. Maybe Maui will fix my problems.
Sure.
And I'd love for you, as a guy who just, can genuinely look someone in the eyes and be like, I am. Yeah. Right?
Thank you for that.
Right? Say, what does it feel like to actually, touch the earth and have unplugged from that nonsense fairy tale?
Right. Well, I can tell you, it's like, once you unplug, once you live that way, the bad things that happen to you are good, right? And so one of the bad things that happened when I was with you, actually, we were filming for our first adventure for a new show that we were going to start, and you take me bouldering, and the place is different than it normally is because the water's lower. We're in a huge drought, and so I, like an idiot, am going barefoot or with minimalist shoes, and bouldering is not a great idea to do that. But I figured I've been doing this for 2 years, like whatever. If something bad would have happened, it would have happened already. But little did I know, I make that jump and I break my foot. And then all of a sudden we have to hike for 45 minutes out of there. And when I broke my foot, it's like, I'd never broken a bone before in my life. This kind of sucks. What do I do about this? And so I learned how to do handstand push-ups is what I did about it. It's like I turned it into something that was just an excuse. Like at that point, I should have been changing up my exercise anyway. I had a really good rhythm. I did, my 5-minute burpee workout, and I did deadlifts, monster lifts every Monday, and I did heavy squats and stuff. But you really should be switching things up. It's just like sometimes life gives that to you instead. And so when you detach from that other world that's like, oh, why does all this bad stuff keep happening to me? And you start living in the other one more as an opportunist. It's like, if I hadn't broken my foot, then I never would have visited Grandmaster Carl and learned about shamanic healing in his way of it. I never would have gone on this other adventure of learning how to do handstand push-ups and getting into acrobatics and other stuff like that. I would have been doing my same kind of boring workout that I've been doing for a long time and probably causing repetitive use injuries. It's just like you start to flow with what happens to you, good or bad, because there is no good or bad. It's just like, if you're still standing here, if you're still breathing, then you're doing just fine. Carlos
Castaneda has a great quote on this. Don Juan says that, the basic difference between an ordinary man and a warrior is that the warrior sees everything as a challenge, whereas the ordinary man or woman sees everything as either a blessing or a curse.
Right. Yeah.
Right. It's just a challenge, and if you're used to challenging your body and challenging your psyche and changing things up and falling away from the insanity that's driving us to buy new shoes and colognes and whatever it is to fit in and all the kind of garbage that people are trapped with.
Yeah.
Then you get out there and live life. Like, yeah, it's kind of hot right now. We're in the sun.
Yeah.
So what?
Right. Well, and that's cool too, because like the first time I really challenged my body more than ever before was when I ran marathons. And especially the first time you do marathon training, it's like, it's intense, obviously. And I did it in Austin, Texas, and I was running on days when it was 105, 110 degrees in the middle of the day because I'm an idiot. But I also like to challenge myself, and I realized that it's all a mental game anyway. And on one particular day, this was after I read Danny Dreyer's book, Cheat Running, and we later became good friends, and it's so cool. But anyway, I started to incorporate some Eastern practices into where I was at mentally with my running. And so on a day when it was like 105 degrees, otherwise I wouldn't have been able to finish that run. I mean, that's borderline dangerous if you don't know what you're doing, and I only half knew what I was doing. So I imagined very simply that I was in a sauna, and I let all of my muscles relax, and I let my body fall forward and just kind of treated it as a meditation. All of a sudden, 5 miles went by in what seemed like 2 minutes of pure bliss. And all of that sweat that was pouring out of my body wasn't miserable. It was something that was cleansing my body of all that I had put it through. And I was teaching my body to open up its pores in hot weather and start to restrict the amount of water that I was using. I was teaching my body to adapt to harsh conditions. And then all of a sudden, running became easier and easier and easier. And that was, none of that would have happened either if I hadn't started running, I think, barefoot again. Because so many of us are disconnected. We're used to using our hands and feeling the world around us and understanding the world that way. But we're usually not using our feet in the same way. And it's a very, very powerful thing because I ran wrong and I had so many injuries because my feet were dumb. I was able to run wrong because my feet couldn't get the feedback that I was hurting my body when I was slamming all of my joints down into the pavement over and over again. When you run barefoot, you cannot run wrong because you will injure yourself immediately. So you have to get smart or you have to stop. And so it was a long series of events, but it enabled me to kind of be able to do the impossible, right? Where if I had to run 30 miles right now, even though I'm not like trained to do it, I know that I could, and I know how, and I know how to sense my body because I've spent so many months and years kind of training my body to adapt and understand it. And so those are the things that you can just do a little bit of every single day. It's like, even if it's spending the morning with your feet barefoot and going outside and wiggling your toes in the grass, just do it. Reconnect.
We should actually get a couple. We should get Danny for them and earthing.
That's a great idea.
Set up. Yeah, like we're going to hook you guys up with resources here because the whole point of this movie was to kind of shake you and be like, look, you have a choice. And you have a choice every time you swipe your credit card. You have a choice every time you go to the grocery store, every time you order food. And you have a choice whether you live in that community that you live in with the people that are looking at your Porsche and wondering why it's not a newer model, or looking at your Toyota and wondering why you don't have a Porsche, or whatever it is, right? Or you could just choose to say, well, those people are idiots, and I'm going to go live life because I don't know what's happening after this, and I'm going to live it to its fullest and enjoy it, and not be part of that problem. And we're not advocating dropping out. Like, okay, so he's got a fiance and they have this wonderful inflection point in time where they're cruising and seeing the world. I have a 6-month-old baby. I live here, right?
Yeah.
Right? I live here, and we're building them a garden, and we're teaching them how organic soil moves and flows. And so wherever you're at in whatever phase of life, it's not about saying I'm dropping out.
Right.
It's about making decisions that honor you and get your freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, Abel, we're gonna. You've got such a wonderful thing going over at the Fat Burning Man show, and just everything that you're doing. He's got a wonderful book coming out. I can't even tell you about it, but I can tell you that they've been testing their recipes on me.
It's a dangerous game,
and it's a dangerous game if you love food. So I know we're going to get some of your stuff in the Success Kit. Tell our friends on the summit where they can find you.
Easiest place to find me, at least in the short term, is fatburningman.com. It will be wilddietbook.com. That's coming out this April, but we're going to put some goodies there in advance. But I'm not hard to find. It's just Abel James. Google me, and there are podcasts, music, all sorts of fun stuff. So thank you for listening. I really appreciate it.
He's a Renaissance man. He's being humble. Great
Thank
to
you,
see
Pedram.
you. Yeah.
Always great to see you too.
Great to see you.